For 10,000 years, the galaxy believed Horus was finished, erased by failure and buried beneath the weight of his own betrayal. Yet the galaxy was wrong, because legends in Warhammer 40K do not truly die, they wait. When Horus finally awakens, it is not to thunderous applause or the roar of armies rallying to his name, but to silence, a heavy and unsettling silence that stretches across the warp itself, as if reality has already decided that his return no longer matters. He remembers the promise of domination, the certainty that his actions would reshape the galaxy forever, but what surrounds him now is something far worse than defeat, because defeat implies an ending, and there are no endings left in this universe. The stars burn as they always have, worlds die as they always have, and the endless war continues with or without him. As Horus rises from the fractured remnants of the ritual that dragged him back into existence, he feels power still coursing through him, but it is unfocused, detached, no longer responding with the immediacy he once commanded, and in that moment a single, horrifying thought takes root in his mind. The galaxy has learned how to exist without Horus. He does not return to claim a throne. He returns to discover that the war he started never needed him to finish, and that realization is more terrifying than any weapon ever forged. Horus begins to move through the galaxy, expecting resistance, fear, or recognition. Yet everywhere he goes he finds only exhaustion, as though the entire universe has grown tired of its own suffering. The Imperium still stands, but not as a shining empire or a unified vision. Instead it exists as a vast, decaying structure held together by routine, desperation, and endless sacrifice, fighting not to win, but simply to delay collapse for one more generation. This is not the Imperium Horus betrayed, nor is it the one he intended to destroy, because its decay has become self-sustaining, feeding on its own inefficiency and paranoia. At the same time, chaos is everywhere and nowhere, no longer a singular, overwhelming force seeking decisive victory, but a fragmented presence woven into every conflict, rebellion, and atrocity across the stars. Horus searches for signs of his influence, for worlds shaped by his vision, for wars still being fought in his name, yet what he finds instead is something deeply unsettling, because his legacy has been diluted, scattered, and repurposed into something smaller and far more persistent. The galaxy did not freeze at the moment of his fall, it adapted, and that adaptation has made his return feel unnecessary. Everywhere Horus travels, one name appears again and again, spoken by enemies and allies alike with equal weight, a name that has replaced his own in the long memory of the galaxy, and that name is Abaddon. Abaddon did not attempt to recreate Horus' grand vision or repeat the heresy as it once was. Instead he embraced a far harsher truth, that the war would never end and that seeking a final victory was a weakness rather than a goal. Where Horus sought transformation, Abaddon sought endurance, and the galaxy rewarded endurance far more than ambition. Horus realizes that Abaddon succeeded not because he was stronger or more charismatic, but because he understood the nature of the universe that emerged after the heresy, a universe that thrives on repetition, attrition, and endless cycles of violence rather than dramatic conclusions. This understanding strikes Horus like a blade, because it reframes his entire existence, revealing that his failure was not tactical or personal, but philosophical. He tried to end something that was never meant to end, and in doing so, he made himself obsolete as Horus pushes deeper into regions where reality itself fractures under the weight of the warp. He finally understands how chaos truly operates in this era, and the truth is far more disturbing than he ever imagined. Chaos no longer revolves around singular champions or legendary figures who reshape history through decisive acts. Instead, it has embedded itself into systems, institutions, and endless conflicts that regenerate suffering automatically. Horus was once valuable because he represented disruption, a catastrophic event capable of shattering a golden age. But now there is no golden age left to destroy, only a stagnant nightmare that feeds on itself. The warp does not answer Horus because it no longer needs to. Its momentum is already sufficient, its influence already absolute in its subtlety. This realization strips Horus of the one thing he believed defined him, not his strength, but his purpose, because a universe built on endless war has no use for a figure who seeks resolution, even a destructive one. When Horus finally encounters warbands that still carry his symbols and echo fragments of his old ideology, he expects loyalty or reverence, yet what he receives instead is something far colder, a pragmatic acknowledgement of his existence followed by indifference. These warriors do not fight for Horus' vision, nor do they believe in a final reckoning. They fight because conflict has become their natural state, stripped of higher meaning or ultimate goals. Horus speaks of unity and direction, but his words fall flat, because unity implies an end state, and these forces have long abandoned the idea that anything will ever truly change. In that moment, Horus realizes that his legacy has not been preserved. It has been repurposed into fuel for an endless engine of war that no longer remembers why it started. He is not their leader, he is a historical footnote, and that truth cuts deeper than any physical wound. Horus turns his gaze toward Terra, expecting either total ruin or absolute dominance, but what he finds instead is far more unsettling. A throne world locked in perpetual survival, neither victorious nor defeated, suspended in a state of endless decay. The Emperor endures, not as a triumphant ruler or a fallen corpse, but as a fixed point around which stagnation revolves, preserving a system that cannot collapse yet cannot evolve. Horus understands that this balance is not accidental, because chaos no longer requires destruction. It benefits far more from a universe trapped in permanent decline. The Imperium and chaos are no longer opposing forces striving for supremacy. They are interlocking components of the same self-sustaining cycle, and humanity is crushed between them. Horus was never meant to replace the Emperor. He was meant to ensure that humanity would never escape this state of endless war. Standing at the center of a galaxy that has outgrown him, Horus finally confronts the most devastating truth of all, that his return changes nothing. The wars continue, the suffering persists, and the universe does not pause to acknowledge his presence, because it no longer revolves around singular figures or defining moments. Horus understands that the greatest horror of this timeline is not chaos dominance, but its stability, a system so entrenched that even its creators are no longer essential. In this realization, Horus faces a choice with no clear answer, whether to attempt to shatter the cycle that no longer recognizes him, or to fade into irrelevance as the galaxy grinds onward without pause. For the first time since the heresy, Horus is not driven by rage or ambition, but by the crushing weight of understanding, because the galaxy he returns to was never meant to be ruled, only endured. The return of Horus does not herald salvation or apocalypse, it reveals something far worse, a universe that has learned how to suffer forever. Chaos has already won, not through conquest, but through normalization, embedding itself so deeply into reality that even legends cannot undo it. Horus stands alone, powerful yet unnecessary, a relic of a time when the galaxy still believed in turning points and decisive outcomes. In this dark timeline, the true horror is not that Horus fell, but that his fall no longer matters, because the war he started has become the natural state of existence itself. And as the stars continue to burn and worlds continue to die, one truth becomes unavoidable. In a galaxy ruled by endless conflict, even the greatest betrayer can become irrelevant.